Canada there at the Hearty and Healthy Irish Hello. You're listening to the Celtic Coach radio show where science, spirituality and self-discovery meet. Boy, do we have a great show for you today. The title of our show today is called Your Kids Are Going to Turn Out Just Fine. Really? Yes, really. Now we have a wonderful lady, a professional life coach, and let me just check to make sure Erika's... Are you out there, Erika?
I'm here.
All right, beautiful. Let me just hit that button and this button, and we'll be rock and roll. All right, so our next guest today, everyone, is just a wonderful lady, Erika Bugbee, professional life coach, and we're going to be talking today about your kids. You know, those human beings that hang out in your house. Yeah, those teens and young adults. Erika lives in Laconia, Washington. I heard it's a very beautiful place. She has a bachelor's degree in counseling psychology from the University of Oregon. She's got a master's degree in marriage and family counseling from City University in Bellevue, Washington. She spent over 19, 20 years as a partner at the Pransky and Associates. And as you may remember, we had her dad, George, on the show here. Oh, gosh, I think it's about a year ago. She's also a frequent webinar presenter and speaker nationally and internationally. And her passion is really helping teens, helping young adults. And she also works with couples or individuals looking for relationship help. With all that said, please put your virtual hands together for our lovely guest today, Miss Erika Bugbee. Erika, hello.
Oh, great. Hey, thank you, Dermot. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome indeed. And I mean, I could have, that intro could have been about 10 minutes longer, but I had to shorten it just with everything that you've been putting out in the world, all the good stuff you've been putting out in the world. Now, are you hearing me pretty clearly, Erika?
Yeah, I hear you great. All
right, and you're coming in pretty clearly too. So welcome, and thanks very much for coming to the show today. Now, I was blessed to, I met Erika a few months ago in L.A. at a conference, and so we struck up a conversation and shared a cab ride, and I said, gosh, you know, I'm going to have this lady come on the show, because when you were talking about, you know, working with teens and adults, and I have a lot of life coaches come on, but I have not yet had anyone come on who works with teen and adults. Now, before we get into all of that, Erika, would you do us a favor, and just so kind of the audience can get a flavor, a little sprinkling of, you know, what inspired you to get into this work? Because I know at the age of 13, you say that you're how did you put it? You went off the rails at 13. So could you share a little bit about that and to kind of give people just a semblance of who you are and what inspires you about this working with teens and young adults?
Yeah, sure, Dermot. I it's interesting because I was a very calm, mellow, happy kid growing up. I just had a really easygoing temperament. I was flexible. I enjoyed myself wherever I went. Change was not a problem for me, transitions. And then all of a sudden I hit 13 and I turned into this like feral animal. Almost overnight, and I got, all of a sudden I was angry all the time and irritable, and I hated everybody, and I was crying. I just turned into this monster. It was really unrecognizable, which freaked me out and freaked my parents out, and it hung around for, a year and a half.
Wow.
Almost 2 years. And it's interesting. I sort of got, there was a few things that I realized on the tail end of that helped me come out of it, but what I realized since then is that happens to a lot of teenagers, and no one really understands what's happening. And as soon as I had some idea that it was just the inside of my head kind of gone sideways and it would level out eventually, it scared me. And I realized, just if somebody had just explained what was going on, it would have taken all the angst away. It would have taken all the concern away, and it would have really changed things for me. So that made me want to be able to talk to teenagers, or the one group that I think in our culture are the most troubled and tormented, and yet talk the least. to people, have the least amount of connection and help to anybody. So they're kind of it's just not a great setup there. So that's really what inspired me.
Yeah, I think about that because when I think about myself going through stuff, very hard for me to ask for help. Like, it's kind of the last thing on my mind is when I'm totally down and out, then I'll ask for help. So I can't imagine what it must be like for a teenager growing up in this, technological environment. Does technology play into this at all, Erika?
Well, I do see. I see there's a lot of connection. People are very down on technology. I know it scares people, the direction that's going, but there's a huge peace of mind that teenagers get when they can see other people's experience. They don't even know that person, but they see a post or they hear it in a song or they see a YouTube video of somebody talking about what it feels like to be bullied or to feel suicidal. There's a huge connection that teenagers get from their phones and from being on computers that they didn't used to get. When I was a teenager, I found it through music, but that was it. And so, not that it doesn't have its downsides, but it has a huge upside in that regard. And in helping them feel like, okay, I don't like this. I don't know when it's, why it showed up and when it's going to leave, but other people seem to feel it. That shift, it can be the moment of turnaround for a lot of teenagers. So I like that side of technology. Yeah.
I remember actually, I remember years ago I read this thing about Eckhart Tolle was saying, if we wouldn't be able to take away all the drugs and alcohol from people because the planet would basically explode, because that's their Xanax. That's their, I suppose mental Xanax, that's their way of kind of coming down. And if you were to take all that away from people, there'd be nothing under that to kind of hold them up.
Yeah, and that's you're right, absolutely right. Is that teenagers right now, their relief is connecting, is the apps on their phone. They're connecting to their peers or being able to watch. It's interesting to go through their little news feed and whatever app they use, and just see what other people are up to. They don't even have to know the people, but it gets them. It essentially just changes their thinking and takes them out of themselves. They essentially interrupts them thinking about themselves, so it provides relief. So it's you take a kid. I see a lot of kids who will get their phones restricted or taken away, or they play video games and that's taken away, and they don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah, and. So you don't see, because I mean, it's good for me to hear this because I often find myself, going down the road and seeing like 20 kids and they're all in a pack and none of them are talking to each other. They're all texting.
Right.
And I'm thinking,
they'll text each other right next to each other. They'll keep texting each other. Yeah.
So so it's good for me to hear that. Hey, there's a component or a proponent for this in terms of. It's helpful for kids, I mean, if I think about it this way, it has to be helping them in some way. Otherwise, they wouldn't all be on their phones. Well,
yeah, it's interesting. It absolutely provides something for them the same way it does for us. But sometimes they're, the same way we do. We'll overuse something as a way of escape, and we're really not handling things, or we overuse it. Like I love bacon, but you can eat too much of that, and so it does create a problem, and there's an addiction component there that we just we don't know how to live in feelings of discomfort because we have this vice that we go to, so we don't ever really learn how to be socially uncomfortable or bored in a waiting room. I don't know about you, but I don't tolerate boredom as well because I know I'm always on my phone as soon as I have time. So I don't even know what it feels like to feel restless. And so, you have the other side of it where we can feel a little, it starts to have a bigger and bigger presence in our lives. And you see that in teenagers where it's hard for them to make eye contact. They don't know how to handle conflict. They text fights. They're fighting. It happens through text. So you hear about, my clients will say, well, I told her this, and, well, how did she take it? Well, here's what she said. I realized, they're texting. So there's a downside to it, but it's interesting. They seem to be able to adapt and figure out some of these conversations they're starting to have in person. They do figure it out. It doesn't look like that to parents, but they do adapt as they get older. And just like everything else, humanity does seem to know how to take something too far and how to scale it back. And, we haven't quite seen the scaling it back yet, but I don't have a doubt that will happen. Yeah,
I appreciated your reference to bacon because for being a vegetarian, I love bacon.
It's funny. I think if there's a weakness generally for vegetarians, I hear it's bacon.
Yeah, I'm good with if I can just eat 2 strips, I'm wonderful. But if I go 4 strips, I pay for it. So I totally know what you're talking about. And my lady is in the car and she's nodding her head too about the bacon, I'm sure. Erika, before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of what you do and how you do it and why you do it and all that, would you share a story? Like what's one story of you working with someone? Like if you were to think back on all the people, all the teens and young adults that you've helped, is there a story that comes to mind that you think of, wow, that was pretty cool how that all turned out?
Yeah, I had a client actually just a week ago that I've been working with for a little bit. So I do video coaching. So I coach the mom in this family, and then I also coach her 14-year-old daughter. And it's interesting. So I see the daughter periodically. Just when she's struggling with something, she'll reach out, and then I work with the mom regularly. And what's interesting is the daughter is originally they came to me because the daughter would get so emotional and so upset that it would just turn the whole house upside down. It was like, it's like it was like a ripple on the water. It would be like somebody throwing a big boulder into the water, and then everybody else is like on those little rafts right next to it. So the whole house, every time she struggled, it turned everybody upside down. And what was interesting is that as they both thought something was wrong with her. And I said, teenagers they go through a lot of changes. They have to sleep a lot. They have to eat a lot. They have to rest a lot because their body, it looks like nothing's happened on the outside, but it's like, when someone's pregnant, they're growing a body in there. Well, in a way, teenagers are going through, when they have growth spurts, they're going through an equal amount of change, and they look like adults, but they're not. And what happens is particularly for teenagers, we have our mood swings every day. If you live with someone, you see it in them a lot more clearly than you'll see it in yourself. But teenagers go through just a much, much louder version of mood swings, and it can, because there's so much happening in their chemistry, it turns clinical. So it looked like this girl was, she would get very self-centered and very dramatic, and she would get suicidal. Uh-huh. And what was interesting about it is that as soon as the mom caught on to the fact that, she's having mood swings just like I have mood swings, it stopped scaring the mom so much, and it stopped scaring the daughter so much, because they realized, one, it's normal. The ups and downs, and when they get down, how irrational they get, that happens to us. How it can be, I always think it's funny working with teenagers because their mood swings, they can turn on you so fast. For those parents out there, your kid seems fine. You make one comment, and all of a sudden they're they're shouting at you and crying and telling you it's not, they're having a really hard day. They just will turn on you, so their moods come on sort of unprovoked and sudden, and they just essentially look like a crazy person. And as soon as the daughter and the mom both saw, well, that's what happens to everybody, and it happens to everybody else in the house too. It calmed both of them down, because they realized, well, it's normal. Like the mom's mood swings, they're temporary, so they blow in like a storm, they come out the other side, and then they clear up naturally. Just like the mom stabilizes, the daughter stabilizes. And as soon as they saw that, it was, it was within a matter of weeks. The mood swings were still there, and they were still sudden, and she still got irrational, but they stopped compounding them by both of them worrying about what's wrong with her, and having the fact of them it stopped frightening them. What happened is they ended up coming and going faster. The daughter stopped being so upset and worrying about herself. She'd get upset, she'd go to her room, she'd calm down. The mom would see, okay, she's just in a state. She'd essentially start treating her just like she did the other kids or her husband when he would come home grumpy. And their household leveled out within a month. It was a completely different household.
Wow. Oh, that is very cool. I think that's one of the reasons I love being a coach. When I just see someone's life getting better, or I see the light go on in their eyes, it's truly magical. It's like a spiritual experience. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's funny because it doesn't change the way that the people are.
Yeah.
I mean, it did in a sense that she went from having chronic mood swings to having essentially acute mood swings where they just lasted a shorter amount of time. But so she still has her mood swings, but what's interesting, like, for example, I talked to the mom just yesterday, and she was driving in the car, and the mom actually just lost her brother suddenly in a car accident. And so she was telling me about it, and she said, as soon as she told the daughter, she picked the daughter up at school, she tells her, on the way home, the daughter's crying and saying, because she was really close to her, the mom's brother, the daughter's saying, why does everything bad always happen to me? And was essentially feeling singled out. And the mom is just essentially disgusted with her daughter, because the mom's like, look, you might have lost an uncle, but you've only known him 14 years. I've known him my whole life, and I'm going through this, and here you are thinking about yourself. And she's like, I think my daughter, I would have, she's telling me this story. She said, I would have thought my daughter was, had a narcissistic personality, or I had this moment where I thought my daughter's broken. She's never going to care about people. She's never going to have relationships. All she thinks about is herself, what's going to happen to her. And it was interesting that by the time they got home and unloaded the groceries, she said, I realized, she's just upset. She just found out. Of course she's upset. And, that's not really the time to quote her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the mom, she said it was so interesting. It was like 20 minutes. The mom went from being upset about and worried about her daughter to just seeing, she's just a regular person. And the mom, even though the mom was upset, the mom's ability to get her perspective back came back so fast. So it didn't change the daughter, but the mom stopped being frightened, in addition to having a daughter that's upset. And it's pretty amazing when you have one person in a house, even if it's just the parent that you get a hold of. I can't always help the kids. Maybe they don't want help, but when I can calm a parent down and help them understand what's happening, it just neutralizes what the kid's going through. It's rather than making it worse. So it's the best job in the world, I think.
Yeah. And so you work with the teen, but you also work with the parents right alongside them?
Yeah, if they want it, and if I feel like it's necessary. So sometimes I feel like, look, the parent is losing so much sleep, and there's so much wear and tear on the parent that I know if I just have a couple of meetings with the parent, oftentimes that's what ages parents is not kids, but worrying about the kids.
Yeah.
It really takes a toll. It takes miles off the engine, and so I work with the parents. Sometimes all I get is the parents. The kids are either too troubled or they don't want help. Oftentimes, frankly, the kids don't need help. They're fine. The parents just scurry around like a little mouse and are freaked out. Don't know how it's going to end, and want to. They don't know how it's going to go, and they just spend a lot of time worrying. When I don't know that it's, I feel like, look, the kid's working this out on their own.
Yeah, well, I think what I'm hearing in that too, Erika, is that I think, I'll speak for myself. Like, I used to think that my craziness and my craziness was a me thing, and what I hear you saying is, look, that's a human thing. Yeah. We're all a little nutty.
It's an us thing, right?
It's an us thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you hit it right. We have baggage.
Yeah,
you can't help it.
We do.
You go through life and things happen, and then you get, you have, you learn how to take something personally, or you end up just having your way of being in life when you're not doing well. So when everybody has their mood swings, well, when you're not doing well, you're really different than your wife, and you're really and when I'm not doing well, I'm really different than you and everybody else in my house. So I have my thing. So the dad in this household, well, he doesn't get worried. He gets detached. He just goes inside. So when there's drama in his house or a problem with his kid, he withdraws. He channels himself into work, and he gets into projects in the house. He just goes inside his head, and so we're all we all fall into our bad habits when we're not doing well, and once people realize, oh, it's just a different form. It's kind of like your low moods make a different sound than mine. Once you realize, well, they all make a sound, then it stops being such a concern, because you're looking at what's normal about them, and the fact that they're a normal part, just like the rest of the physical world. There's an ebb and a flow to the physical world. So there's always, if you look at an ecosystem, there's or if you look at like fires, I know you guys just had fires down where you are. There's fires, and then there's regrowth, and then fires and regrowth, and that's what happens in all of nature. When it happens in the human body, our immune system's strong, it gets weak. So energy is moving around all the time, and it's constantly ebbing and flowing. And once parents can see, well, the mood states are just one expression of that, one demonstration of that. It's just louder in kids. So it frightens them, and it looks like there's something different going on with them than what's going on with everybody else. As soon as they see them as, that's normal, what happens is they start seeing, well, this is why I get paid the big bucks, is I have to show them, look, they do go down, yes, but they come back up every single time. So even this girl who just gets really mean, she tells her mom, "You're the worst mom ever," and she gets really nasty, or she did at the time, and then she'd come back and say, "I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know why I do that. I feel like I can say anything, and so I do, and it's not right." So she does. It gets ugly, but then she comes back, and that's, for us, what that looks like is remorse. Is when we, mistreat people, we feel remorse. So that's what, when parents start seeing that they have resilience and they come back up just like us, what they start seeing over time, every episode, is that they have health and they recover, and we don't have to worry about them. There's some system that pops them back up, and that's where parents can calm down.
Yeah, I think we named the show "Your Kids Are Going to Turn Out Fine." Really, yes, really. I think we could have called it, "It's Okay to Be Human."
Right.
I think that would have been another title.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Erika. So our title, which I'm throwing it back to you. If you're wondering who came up with the title, Erika did. Your kids are going to turn out just fine. Really? Really? How do you know that, Erika? Like what is it that we don't know that lets you know that, hey, that's true? That kids really will work. They'll turn out fine if we can what?
Well, one of the things that I point parents back to is that if you stop worrying about your kids for a minute and you look back at your life as a teenager or the life of your friends as teenagers, you'll see, well, I was a train wreck in certain ways. I was self-involved. I was mean. I let people walk all over me. I was awkward, antisocial. And you realize, well, like I have an engineer I'm working with right now, and he's worried. He's got twins, and they're both very antisocial. And they're not into sports and all the things that people brag about on Facebook. Kids aren't good at any of those things. And it's so interesting because I said, well, you're not very social and you're not into sports. And he said, well, yeah, but, I happened into a life, I found a wife that doesn't, she does the socializing for us. And I found a job that doesn't care that I'm not social. And then he started laughing and he said, well, I guess probably they'll find that too. And that's what you want to realize is that we were messy at some point. And even though we still have things about us that we consider weaknesses, oftentimes the world doesn't care, just because people have the idea you have to be social and you have to be athletic. Well, that's just, if you get off Facebook and you look at the rest of the world, plenty of people that don't do sports and aren't social that are really happy. Yeah. But even the things where, we've had sort of defining moments in our lives where we've matured and grown and realized, oh, I have to care even if I'm upset about somebody dying. There's somebody right next to me who may not be okay, so let me check on them. And we have moments where we mature about our self-centeredness. We mature about our moods, and that happens through your, essentially through you come out of your mood, and there's this intelligence that shows us, look, you just said something really mean. You got to go clean that up. And there's a way in which we're able, in our recovery periods from our lows, we remember ourselves and we clean up what happened. We have to take accountability for what we did, and we grow. And that's the part of parenting that we forget is it's not you raising the kid, really. I know they're living in your house and you're feeding them, but they're working things out with life the way that you and I had to work things out with life, and we had to grow in response to life requiring it. So we responded to that. We listened, and so we evolve. And everybody listening to this, we were a worse version of ourselves in our teen years than we are now.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Erika, we're going to take a 30-second minute station ID here, so just stay on the phone, and we will be right back. joined us. You're listening to the Celtic Coach radio show where science, spirituality and self-discovery meet on Cows LP 92.5 FM on the dial. If you're sitting at home in the lazy boy listening to the show, or you can get it on your car, of course, or in your car, depending on where you are on the planet, at 92.5 FM, Occidental, California. We're also streaming on the World Wide Web at KWS.FM. We're talking today with the lovely Erika Bugbee, professional life coach, and we're talking about how do we help teens and young adults. Now, the title of our show is, You're going to turn out just fine. Your kids are going to just turn out just fine. Really? Yes, really. So, Erika, thanks very much for being with us today. When we were talking about, what we're going to talk about in the show today, one of the things that you mentioned was that kids may seem fragile and breakable from the outside, but you say yet they're far more robust and resilient than they look. Could you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's what strikes me about teenagers is how much more hardship they're enduring than we are. They got their mood swings are much bigger, much louder, and much more pronounced in them. But their peers are going through that too. So you get, sort of the ugliest side of people as a teenager. You get them with essentially the messiest and the worst version of them that they're ever going to have. Often happens in high school. And as early 20s, and they're navigating all of that, and they don't have any life experience like we do when we go take a job and we have a difficult person. Well, we've had difficult people in our lives before. They haven't, and so they look like they can't handle anything because they're falling apart constantly, or they're little things that we say or do upset them. But what's interesting is that, they're in the same way, you look at little babies, when the baby's first born and they look really fragile. Well, babies have, some of the strongest immune systems. I think the strongest immune system they'll ever have. And that's what you want to be able to consider. They do look sensitive and fragile at home, but what happens is I get a lot of parents complaining about, well, they're really, they're fine in public. They talk to their teachers respectfully, or they're nice to their friends. They come home and they're mean to me. They dump on me, and they're horrible. And, I'm the one if there's one person they should be nice to, it should be me. But what happens is they do get the hang of how to keep it together. But they're doing it all day. So by the time they get home, they've been staying stable and handling things, internalizing them, people being mean and making comments, and somebody not wanting to sit with them at lunch, or flirting with the guy they like, even though they know they like them. There's so much happening inside their day, and if you watch them, you can't really tell, because they all look like they're just going to class and keeping it together. They come home, and they've been holding together all day. So the amount that they're handling in their day-to-day, that's where you see the robustness. And I think that's where a lot of parents, they get the idea that their kids, how are they going to make it out there in the world? Well, how they are when they're at home, they're just learning a new thing. And they're, when they go, by the time they go out in the world, they're pretty good at it, but they're essentially in training in their high school years and their, early adult years. That's where they make all of their mistakes and get blindsided by things, and handling money, friends, and who to trust, and how to handle responsibility. They're just working it out, but the amount that they're taking on and learning is 30 times what you and I are dealing with in our everyday life. So it's pretty remarkable, actually, how composed they are, even with the fallout that I see in the evenings.
Yeah, this is. I tell you, this is very helpful, at least for me. I'm kind of smiling here because I'm thinking about the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. and I guess I think you did too. And we had big hair and disco in the 80s, so we had some good. I mean, I wouldn't want to repeat being from like 13 to 17. I wouldn't want to repeat it. It was it was very confusing. But I had big hair, and we had Duran,
and I don't want anybody looking at pictures of me from that era either, given how we dressed. Well, I had hair back then, so I enjoy looking at the pictures a little bit. But do you think that the kids today have it harder than we had, or is that total rubbish? Well, I think it's all relative. I think that there's, as I've been working specializing teenagers now in almost 20 years, and I do see more anxiety than I did before, and I don't just think it's because they have a word for it.
Or a pill for it.
I think right. I do think that they think about themselves more than they used to, and but a lot of that is parents think about kids. I felt like I know my parents wouldn't say this, but in a lot of ways, I look back at my childhood and I kind of felt like somewhat of a footnote in their book. I didn't quite. It looked like. They didn't spend a lot of time thinking, how's she doing? What's her experience like? Oh, she had a fight with a friend. They didn't know, frankly, what was going on with me. Partly because I didn't really say, and partly because they just figured, well, she'll handle it. And they didn't really. So parents now, back in the 80s, I don't know if there were parenting books. I think the first parenting book came out maybe in the late 70s, maybe. There really weren't, parents weren't reading parenting books. And there's a huge cultural change. You have parents that, with the internet, that are talking about and thinking about, how am I doing as a parent? How's my kid doing? My kid okay? They seem like they're ready for life. Parents are just tracking their kids minute by minute in a way where they weren't before, and that does create a level of anxiety, I think, because they're constantly lifting the lid and saying, how's this looking?
Right.
It does give the kids an idea. Well, am I going to be okay? Am I ready? Am I ready to go out in the world? Do I know what I'm doing? What am I going to do with my life? How are my friends? I had a fallout with my friend. Am I going to get more friends? So parents, that's one of the downsides of the internet, is everybody's talking about how they're doing, how their kids are doing, what their kids are doing, and you have a lot of people putting out a lot of theories about how, where social anxiety is going to go in this person as an adult, and so it's that's there is a presence there of anxiety that I didn't used to see. On the other hand, there's also parents are more expressive and show their caring more on the outside for their kids. They just are more deliberate, and they're paying attention and keeping an eye on them. Maybe they take it too far sometimes, but a lot of the upside of this era is that kids don't feel like a footnote. They feel like, my parents are in my corner. If I need help, they'll be there to a fault. If I don't want them involved in something at school, a problem at school, I better not mention it at home, because they'll be at my school the next day. So kids do feel like their parents are in their corner now more than they used to.
What causes the anxiety in the kids, Erika? Because we talk about kids being anxious and stressed and all of that. Well, what's causing the anxiety in them?
Well, it's funny. This probably isn't maybe a very professional example, but you drink. When you have a hangover. For those of you that have ever had more than a couple glasses of wine with dinner, and the next day you feel like your hair follicles hurt. You feel like you're going to die, and you promise you'll never drink again. Well, there's something in a way that suffering, knowing that that's just because we drank too much, and it's as we speak, our body is getting that out of our system. That makes the discomfort much more comfortable. So we feel it doesn't scare us. On top of the discomfort, we don't have the panic and the tightness of am I dying? And in a way, that's what happens with people when they don't really understand the system that we're part of, where your essentially emotional energy, your thoughts, quality of your thinking goes up and down. You're living in thought all day long, just like you dream at night. Your thinking is active during the day, and it takes you on this essentially emotional experience all day long, and that's what moods look like. And when people get in lows, if they don't understand, you know what, I'm just hungry, I'm just tired, or I got upset about something this morning, I can't get over it. When people understand that it's just their energy is low, and that's what the discomfort is, they start worrying that there's something wrong with them. And they start worrying that when we're not doing well, it really feels like your outlook is dark. So looks like you look out at life, and life looks very threatening, and your friends look like they don't care, and it doesn't look like you can reach out to anybody because you feel like I'm just going to be a burden. There's nobody really here for me. And if you don't understand, that's just essentially an emotional hangover. It's just your body kind of purging low energy, and it'll come back up again and right itself. It scares people. Essentially, it creates a nervousness or a panic, or what you're calling anxiety, that there's something wrong. There's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with life. And it frightens us seeing the symptoms that happen to us when we're low. If it looked like just a hangover, that is just a temporary biological state we're in that's explained by the drinking, in this case, it's explained by just our ebbs and flows and energy, it scares us. And when people start tracking those and saying, oh, my God, I feel like this a lot, and do other people feel like this? Well, they do, but they're suicidal, and maybe I'm suicidal. It starts to go, it turns into kind of a theme of anxiety that they walk around with as if there's something wrong with them.
Like a cloud. So what's your take then, Erika, on people who get in low moods and then they go for the alcohol, or they go for the pills and stuff to help them come back up or help them come down? Do you think there's a place for? Because I'm sure you have kids that come to you who are already taking some type of medication, and then you must find out they must find out through working with you that they don't need those medications. Does that happen? Is that an often occurrence?
Yeah, it often happens. It doesn't always happen. It often happens where once people realize, oh, it's just my thoughts get low, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. I get depressed, but like this girl I talked about earlier, she gets self-involved and dramatic and mean, and she realizes once people start to see, oh, that happens to everybody. Some people get depressed, dad gets withdrawn, detached, mom gets worried, that they start getting a learning curve about handling their lows, and they get more graceful about it. And instead of getting involved in the content and the drama of their thinking when they're low, and feeling like there's nobody there for them, they feel like, well, I always go here. I always feel alone when I'm down. And I know that when I come out of it, I realize I wasn't alone. I felt alone, but I wasn't alone. And that there's a gracefulness that comes with having mood swings. People can learn about the fact of thought, quality of our thinking, and the feelings that we're in, going ebbing and flowing. When people stop being frightened by the experience of it, and they understand, things are not as bad as they look. When I get down, it's just a temporary, and my thinking gets very irrational and very inaccurate, really. Once people start picking up on that's how the system works, they stop being so frightened by it, and they stop getting involved in the content of how they feel when they're down. They don't buy into it. They just start to ride it out and say, all right, I just got to get out of this feeling. Let me distract myself. And that's oftentimes that's where people, as soon as people learn how to do that, the low moods become more predictable. Those habits in themselves become just, I must be down again because I'm feeling alone, or I hate my mom. So they stop taking it as seriously, and they end up not going down as far, and they start coming out of it sooner. So the mind tends to, if you don't hold something down, it pops back up. So people essentially end up not needing medication to whatever degree they're able to take their moods in stride and start to get the hang of what it's like to be a human being with moods, rather than feeling like you're broken and being frightened by the moods. You kind of get used to them the way that people get used to, turbulence on an airplane, which used to make me nervous and scared and nauseous. And I realized, okay, I just have to relax, and doesn't mean I'm going to die, even though where my thoughts go. As soon as I relaxed, it wasn't comfortable, but it stopped being so much of a problem. And all of a sudden flying didn't create a little bit of anxiety, but not much. And that's where I see people not needing medication. Their side effects will start to increase because there's not as much low mood happening for the medication to attend to, so it floats around their system.
Yeah, I love what you just said there a little earlier. What you don't hold down pops back up, and that's a great. That's not a movie quote, is it? I know you like movie quotes.
No, I do love movie quotes. That's not a movie quote. That's
what's
not
your
a very good one, but yeah.
What's your favorite movie quote, Erika?
Oh, my favorite movie quote. Well, I think I love. There's one, I'm not going to get the quote right, but there's a part in American Beauty, if you've seen that.
I have, yeah.
Where the teenager that was so troubled said, there's so much. I feel so much. There's so much love in the world that I can't. I don't know what to say. Something like that. He's essentially. It always stood out to me because he's living in this horrible situation with his dad that's just mean and hostile, and he could feel love anyway, which I thought was pretty remarkable. Anyway, it was. I don't have the quote, of course, because it was such a cool moment. But most of my favorite movie quotes are from movies that wouldn't be appropriate to quote here.
Well, do you have a favorite?
I'll email you my favorite one.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite movie? What's your favorite movie?
Well, one of the movies I love is Elf.
Elf. That's a Christmas one.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah. We watched it. No, we didn't watch it this Christmas, but we usually watch that one.
Well, it's funny because I watch that. I watch American Beauty a lot. Every few years I'll watch it. But it's funny. Elf. I think my favorite Elf quote is where he says to Santa, "You sit on a throne of lies." He figures out that the Santa that's in the department store is not real. It's not the actual Santa because he knows Santa. So he's all excited. He goes over there to say hi to him, and he realizes this guy's a fake. So he's telling him while he's sitting there, the Santa is sitting there listening to what kids want for Christmas. He's trying to tell the kids that he's lying and that he's not Santa, which I thought was hilarious.
And for any kids listening, Santa is real. We're not ragging on Santa right now.
I was going to say, do I have to worry about kids listening to this? But I think of that quote because they. We're essentially our mind is lying to us constantly.
Yes.
And I think, you know, a lot of what I talk to teenagers about is, look, you know, your mind will lie to you about your friends, that they don't care about you, that adults are stupid, and that they don't care if you learn or not, and they don't care if you flunk out or not. Those same people, you see that those are, you know, when you get out of your upset, you'll see you do have friends, and your friends do care, and there are teachers that care, and it's I think one of the things that I think surprised me one of the things that saved me is to realize that my thoughts will tell me things about life and about me, about my future that are lies. I thought everything you thought was true, and I didn't. And so, in a way, I just find that movie, I mean, it's silly, and I love seeing adults acting like little kids when they can pull it off. There's something kind of profound in that how he is and the message behind that. And that particular, I thought that particular line is so funny because I use it so much, is that, you know, your mind lies to you constantly.
Yeah.
And as soon as you consider, well, maybe it's lying, it stops scaring you as much, because generally the worse we feel, the more lies our mind is telling. And so it's you catch on to that, and it's really hard for your mind to scare you much once you see the correlation between feeling low and the distortion, you know, the level of lying. The worse you feel, the more lies there are. So that when you stabilize again, that's a truth you can count on. You see things. We tend to see things more accurately and with more perspective, and that's the thinking we can trust. So it's kind of a system that protects us really well.
Yeah, I'm smirking here because I remember in the I'm pretty sure you didn't have it over here, but I think it was Mr. Bean at some point in his career did this show called Not the 9 o'clock News, and it was in Ireland. We have at 9 o'clock we have the real news, and then at 10 o'clock you had Not the 9 o'clock News, which was the fake news.
Right.
And so the whole thing was just fake news at 10 o'clock, but they were telling you that it was the real 9 o'clock news. And I kind of think of what you're saying in that respect, that a lot of the stuff that goes through our head is just fake news. Like, it's just... Now, how do you help teens and young adults, and myself included here, how do you help people distinguish what's fake news and what's real? How would you know the difference?
Well, you know, the thing is, I get that question so much from my clients. That's how I know they're catching on. The thing is you can't know. At the time, you're not going to know. So when I feel like, I don't know, you know, I've got teenagers, and I something happens, and I think, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I only see two ways to handle this. I don't like either of them. And, and it looks like I'm trapped. And what I want to do is, I don't want to, but what I'm compelled to do is sit and think about it for the next 3 days and agonize and figure out which horrible path I should take.
Yeah.
And what I know better, and so I know, you know, I'm not, even though it looks like there's no answer to this, and there's no way this is going to turn out, I have to set this aside and let my mind get its equilibrium back. I have to let my head clear, essentially, and to do that, I have to turn my back on this very important problem. And what happens is, at some point, my mind will stabilize. Maybe I'll wake up the next day, or, you know, I'll be driving. I oftentimes see things, my head clears when I drive. And I'll look and see, then I can tell, are there really two solutions? Usually I can see a third that I didn't see before. And every once in a while I'll see, there really are two solutions. But I see it in a way that has more perspective built into it. So, but it's not something, even though I've been doing this 20 years, I'm just as impaired as everybody else when I get into a panic or when I get discouraged or overwhelmed. We can't tell what's true. We can't even tell if we have a grasp of the problem. Sometimes you think there's a problem, and then later you're like, what am I thinking about that? I don't even have to deal with that. I'm not going to do anything about it. So you can't really tell what's a lie and what's a truth when you're impaired. When you've lost, if you're upset or tense or worried or shut down, that tightness makes you unable to evaluate what's true and what's not. And really, there's a level of patience required from us to sort of have the jury be out on that thing until we get our bearings back and we can see clearly and think clearly. We get our neutrality back, and then we can look and see what's true and what's not.
Yeah, I love that. I love to be reminded, for me anyway, the level of patience to be able to allow some patience for the system to reset, or for the muddy water to clear, so I can actually see something. Yeah, I really enjoy that. Erika, we still have 4 minutes here, and I want to kind of start to wrap up. I do have a question for you, but before I do, would you share with the audience, like for the parents listening out there, or the teens that are listening out there, young adults who might want to connect with you, how's the best way to do that?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can go to my website, which is www.erikabugbee.com. That's Erika with a K. Bugbee is Bugbee, like a bug and a bee. There's on there, for those of you with teenagers, you can download there's a little article I wrote called the Fundamentals for Creating a Calm and Connected Household for those parents raising teenagers and young adults. And so you can reach out to me there and contact me there if you like. You can get on my email list, and I'll send you out interviews like this that I do, webinars, conference talks. I send a lot of stuff out for free because I think parents need all the help they can get these days. So, so that's how they would reach me.
Yeah, beautiful. Erika, thanks very much for your time today. I tell you what, I learned a lot from myself, never mind for the teens and the young adults. Erika, will you take everything that we've talked about today and put it into a few words in terms of, in terms of the was kind of tongue in cheek, but your kids are going to turn out fine. What is it you'd like the parents and the teens and young adults to know? What would you like them to know from everything that we've talked about today?
Well, I'd like them to know that there are, for every quality in their kids that makes us concerned, there are strengths and there's signs of resilience. At every down they have have just as many ups, and there are good qualities that come out when they stabilize and recover. And for the parents that can look at the fact that they recover and the strengths and the stuff that they are handling with amazing grace and composure, you will, without having your kid have to change or improve, you'll actually see they're going to be fine themselves. Like, if you're looking for qualities they have that you can trust and count on, that they can trust and count on, rather than tracking your concerns, you'll see a much healthier kid. And because the physical world leans towards survival and adaptability, your kids are part of that same system. So if you're looking for their ability to adapt, you'll see it. If you're looking for their ability to flail, you'll see that. So the more faith and confidence you have in your kid, the more peace of mind you'll have, and you'll be able to give that to them.
Thank you, Erika. Again, if you just joined us, well, you've missed the whole show, so you're going to have to come back next week. We're talking to Erika Bugbee. If you want to connect with Erika, you can go to Erika with a K, not a C, Bugbee, Bugbee, Bugbee as in a bug and a bee, love that name, .com, and of course, we're here every Friday from 1 to 3, the Celtic radio show, Celtic Coach radio show, where science and spirituality meet. Until the next time, Erika, thank you very much for being with us. Why? What an inspiration you are. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really nice, Dermot, and you can enjoy your weekend.
I will. You too. And I'll give you a movie to think about this weekend. You may have already seen it. Blinded by the Light. Have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
You got it. I'm not even going to tell you about it. I think you would just love it. Blinded by the Light. It just came out about a year ago. And it's about a Pakistani kid. So if you go and look out for that, great movie.
Well, we got a weekend of rain here, so I'll put that on my agenda.
All right. Wishing you all the best, Erika. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Dermot.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.